Let's talk about the topic of quasi-contracts. Quasi-contract is actually not a contract. It's a remedy when there is no contract. Don't think about this as a requirement for a contract in the way that offer, acceptance, or consideration are, but instead think about it as a solution when in fact there is no contract. I'll give you examples in a minute, but let me give you the 4 requirements for quasi-contract. First, you have to show that a benefit was conferred, that one party give a benefit to the other party. Second, you have to show that the party had a reasonable expectation of being paid for conferring that benefit. Third, you need to show that without payment there would be unjust enrichment, that it would simply be unfair for the defendant to have benefited when the plaintiff reasonably expected to be paid. And fourth, if all of this is shown, the remedy is the reasonable value of the goods or services actually received. Note that this may or may not be as much money as the plaintiff is asking for. The court will look at it and say what's reasonable. Let's take a look at a couple hypotheticals, because this is a topic where it's definitely easier to understand if you simply apply it to some circumstances. So hypothetical number 1, suppose that right in the middle of class you faint. We call the paramedics, they take you to the hospital, and thank heavens you're revived. Once they treat you, once you're conscious, you leave the hospital immediately. Do you owe the paramedics for the bill they later send you? On an exam, you would say, well, was there a contract? You could argue that the paramedics made an offer to provide you with medical services. Did you accept that offer? Well, no, you were unconscious. You couldn't accept anything. Is there a contract? No, there's no agreement. No, you can't have an agreement with someone who's unconscious. Is it unfair if the paramedics don't get paid? A court would probably say yes. And you've applied the remedy of quasi-contract. So let's go through it again. Number 1, did the paramedics confer benefits on you? Yes. They gave you emergency medical care. Number 2, did they reasonably expect to be paid? Well, yes. I know there are a couple of fringe religions who don't want medical services, but most of us do want emergency medical care. So even though you weren't conscious, it's reasonable that for a court to say that they would assume you would want emergency medical care. Number 3, otherwise, in other words, if the paramedics were not paid, would there be unjust enrichment? Well, sure, you're getting medical services that you would have wanted if you'd only been awake and conscious to agree to it, and you're getting them without payment. That's unfair to the paramedic company. Number 4, the court will then order a remedy. How much? It may or may not be what the paramedic's bill is. The courts will look at what the bill is and determine whether that's reasonable. So in hypothetical number 1, yes, quasi-contract would be applied as a remedy. Now let's go through hypothetical number 2. Suppose that to surprise your roommate, you paint her room. When she returns, you give her a bill for the painting. Does she owe you the bill? First, did you confer benefits on your roommate? Well, I guess it depends on what color you painted and whether you did a good job of it, but maybe. Number 2, did you reasonably expect to get paid? If this is all the information we have, I don't know why you would expect to get paid for that. She didn't ask you to paint the room. You never discussed it beforehand, or at least we don't have any indication that happened. You've never done work for her before, so why would you think she's going to pay you for this? So you're probably going to fail on the second element of quasi-contract, even if you got past that. Number 3, otherwise would there be unjust enrichment? Well, no, there really wouldn't be unjust enrichment. You kind of took it upon yourself, and there was no indication that she wanted you to do this. You didn't have an agreement about anything, or at least from the facts that we have here. So you just gave her a gift. That's nice. The end. Do you get the remedy of quasi-contract? No. So whenever you come across a circumstance where there is no contract, but that the result somehow feels unfair to you, go through the 4-part test and check to see whether quasi-contract might be a remedy that substitutes for the lack of existence of a contract.